Why do we still talk about Audrey Hepburn's elegance, Marilyn Monroe's allure, or Grace Kelly's composure, yet struggle to remember what today's biggest actresses wore just a few award seasons ago? It's a strange kind of cultural amnesia, especially in an era overflowing with images. Modern actresses are undeniably beautiful. They're styled by elite teams, dressed in couture pulled straight from the runway or the archive, photographed in ultra-high resolution, and broadcast across every platform imaginable. And yet, something doesn't stick. The image dazzles, but it doesn't stay. It doesn't settle into memory. It doesn't harden into myth. Scroll through every red carpet today, and the experience is instant and disposable. You admire the craftsmanship, notice the silhouette, maybe double tap, and then you move on. The next look replaces it almost immediately. But then you stumble across a black and white still from the 50s. One woman, one light source, one unmistakable look, and you stop. You recognize her instantly, even if you were never alive when that image was taken. It feels familiar, anchored, permanent, as if it belongs to a shared cultural memory you somehow inherited. This isn't nostalgia, it's structure. Old Hollywood didn't just create stars, it created icons. Women whose images were designed to endure rather than trend. Their beauty wasn't optimized for novelty, relatability, or virality. It was engineered for recognition, repetition, and restraint. Faces were refined into symbols, looks were reinforced over time until they became inseparable from the woman herself. And that difference changes everything. Because iconography requires things, modern celebrity culture actively resists. Limits instead of abundance, mystery instead of access, consistency instead of constant reinvention. This video is about what we lost when that system disappeared, and why. In an age of infinite visibility, true iconic beauty has become almost impossible to recreate. And hello everyone, my name is Laura and welcome back to my channel. Chapter 1. The Fading Art of the Look. Modern red carpets are spectacular. Perfect lighting calibrated for digital screens. Flawless tailoring adjusted down to the millimeter. Couture pulled from fashion archives or custom made overnight. Everything is beautiful and yet very little is memorable. Ask yourself honestly, how many red carpet looks from the past decade could you describe in detail without looking them up? How many silhouettes, hairstyles, or styling choices feel anchored in your memory rather than briefly admired and instantly replaced? Old Hollywood actresses didn't just wear clothes, they inhabited silhouettes. Their style wasn't something they experimented with it week to week. It was something they lived inside long enough for it to become inseparable from who they were. When you picture Marilyn Monroe, you don't think 1950s fashion. You think Marilyn, platinum hair styled into soft control waves, halter necklines that draw attention to the shoulders and collarbone, dresses that cling with intention rather than excess. Her look wasn't a trend, it was a visual language. Sensual, warm, unmistakable. You could recognize her even in silhouette, even in motion, even from a single frame. The same is true for Audrey Hepburn. When you imagine her, you don't remember variety, you remember restraint. Clean lines, cropped trousers, ballet flats, a black dress so simple it crossed the line from clothing into symbol. Audrey didn't chase fashion cycles or seasonal trends. Fashion learned how to speak Audrey. Her look communicated intelligence, elegance, and self-possession so consistently that it became timeless almost by accident. That's because these images were never designed for novelty. They were designed for recognition. Old Hollywood understood that the human brain remembers consistency far more deeply than it remembers variation. Recognition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates attachment, and attachment over time creates myth. The goal wasn't to surprise the audience with something new every time. It was to reassure them with something unmistakable. Today, actresses are styled to demonstrate range. One week it's archival Versace. The next is a deliberately provocative, internet-breaking moment engineered to dominate social media feeds. Reinvention is praised as evolution. Consistency is quietly framed as stagnation, boredom, or lack of creativity. The unspoken rule is clear. Never repeat yourself for too long. Never let the audience feel like they fully know your image. But iconography doesn't come from variety, it comes from repetition with intention. Old Hollywood treated repetition as a tool, not a weakness. A look wasn't something you abandoned after one appearance. It was something you reinforced, film after film. Publicity still. After publicity still, magazine cover after magazine cover. Over time, the image fused with the woman herself. You weren't meant to see her differently every time. You were meant to recognize her instantly, even in shadow, even at distance. Modern culture often confuses memorability with shock. We reward the look that goes viral, not the one that quietly endures. But old Hollywood pursued something far more powerful. Imprint. An imprint doesn't demand attention, it accumulates it, slowly, patiently, almost invisibly. And patience, more than anything else, is the ingredient modern celebrity culture no longer has. Chapter 2. The studio system built myths, not brands. The secret ingredient behind old Hollywood icons was never talent alone. Talent mattered, of course, but it was only the raw material. What truly set the era apart was infrastructure. A tightly controlled, centralized system built not just to make movies, but to manufacture images with near-religious precision. The studio system functioned like a cathedral workshop, where designers, photographers, lighting experts, costume departments, and publicists all worked towards a single visual theology. Faces were treated as sacred material. Every choice, down to the angle of a chin or the curve of a brow, was intentional. Studios didn't simply cast actresses, they constructed them. When a woman signed a studio contract, she didn't just gain a role, she surrendered her image. Names were changed to sound sharper, softer, and more memorable. Accents were trained or erased. Walks were choreographed. Posture was corrected. Faces were studied obsessively under studio lights to determine which angles carried the most power. Bodies were refined not to meet a universal standard of beauty, but to work on camera. What emerged wasn't just a performer. It was a coherent visual identity designed to be instantly recognizable and endlessly repeatable. This wasn't about self-expression. It was about clarity. Take Marlene Dietrich. Paramount didn't simply dress her well, they sculpted her entire presence. Her image was built around sharp androgyny, tailored suits, exaggerated cheekbones, and dramatic lighting that carved her face into shadow and glow. She was styled to feel cool, controlled, and untouchable. Even her stillness became part of the persona. That image was repeated relentlessly across films, portraits, and publicity stills. It was never softened, never contradicted, never diluted. Dietrich didn't reinvent herself for relevance. She deepened the same visual idea until it became inseparable from her name. Or consider Greta Garbo, whose mystique was built on distance rather than display. MGM understood that Garbo's power came from withholding. She gave few interviews, she avoided public appearances whenever possible. Her expressions were restrained, inward, and almost solemn. The studio leaned into this, crafting her image of emotional depth and isolation. Garbo's face was never casual, never candid. It was not meant to feel accessible, it was meant to feel elevated. Her image wasn't open to interpretation, it was curated. This level of control extended far beyond wardrobe and makeup. Studios dictated nearly everything: hair color and grooming, posture and movement, vocal tone, cadence, approved interviews, photographic angles, lighting setups, even romantic narratives circulated in the press. There were no off-brand moments because the brand was enforced at all times. No candid collapses, no behind-the-scenes oversharing. A star's private life existed only insofar as it could support the myth that the studio was telling. From a modern perspective, this level of control feels deeply unsettling, and in many ways it was. Actresses were monitored, restricted, and often punished for stepping outside their assigned image. Autonomy was limited. Freedom was compromised. The system treated women less like people and more like property. But aesthetically, it worked, because discipline is what allows beauty to become a symbol. Without boundaries, an image diffuses. Without repetition, it dissolves. The studio system understood that for a face to become iconic, it had to be protected from contradiction and exposure. It had to be repeated patiently, consistently, until it felt inevitable. Modern celebrity culture operates on the opposite logic. Today, stars are encouraged to show range, relatability, and constant evolution. precision. Authenticity is prized over coherence. Access is valued over mystique. But icons are not built on transparency, they're built on clarity. Old Hollywood didn't create personal brands, it created myths. And myths require structure, restraint, and the belief in the long game. Things a modern fame machine no longer knows how to sustain. Chapter 3. Beauty designed to last. Old Hollywood beauty was never about flawlessness. It was about definition. Faces were chosen not for how seamlessly they blended into an ideal, but how strongly they held shape. Bold brows that framed emotion, distinct noses that anchored the face, unapologetic bone structure that caught light and cast shadow. These features weren't contacted or softened into neutrality. They were emphasized, refined, and turned into visual signatures. Beauty in this era was not about disappearing into perfection. It was about being unmistakable. Lighting was central to this philosophy. Old Hollywood cinematography treated the face like sculpture. Light wasn't used to flatten, blur, or erase. It was used to carve. Cheekbones were sharpened by shadow, jawlines were outlined by contrast, eyes were deepened, not widened. Faces were built out of glow and darkness, creating dimensionality that could survive black and white films, harsh studio lights, and repeated viewings. The face had to read from a distance. It had to hold. Makeup followed the same logic. It was graphic, intentional, and unapologetically visible. Eyeliner was meant to define the eye, not disappear into the lash line. Lips were clearly drawn, not blurred into softness. Brows were shaped to communicate authority, mystery, or vulnerability. The goal was never to look natural. Naturalism doesn't translate well into cinema. The goal was to look cinematic, slightly unreal, larger than life, suspended somewhere between human and symbol. Every aesthetic choice was made with endurance in mind. From eyeliner thickness to gown cut, everything was designed to survive grainy film stock and still remain legible decades later. Costumes emphasized line, movement, and silhouette rather than intricate detail that would be lost on camera. Necklines framed the face, fabrics reacted predictability to light. Hairstyles were structured to hold their shape through long shooting days. These women were styled like statues, not selfies, meant to be seen again and again without losing their impact. This approach created beauty that aged remarkably well, because it relied on structure rather than illusion. It translated across time, technology, and cultural shifts. A publicity still from the 40s still feels powerful today because it's built on form, contrast, and clarity. The image doesn't collapse when trends change because it was never trend dependent to begin with. Modern beauty culture operates on the opposite principle. Today's ideal prioritizes smoothness, uniformity, optimization. Skin is blurred into sameness. Faces are contoured towards the same algorithm-approved proportions. Distinct features are softened, minimalized, or corrected until individuality becomes almost accidental. The goal is flexibility, the ability to adapt to every new aesthetic moment without friction. Hair trends cycles weekly. Makeup aesthetics rise and fall at algorithmic speed. 1 month is clean girl, the next is full glam, and then it's faux natural minimalism that requires 10 invisible steps. Individuality dissolves into sameness, and sameness becomes safety. The face is no longer treated as composition, it's treated as a surface. Old Hollywood asks a fundamentally different question. What makes her unforgettable? Modern culture asks, what's trending right now? One builds memory, the other builds content. Memory requires stability. It needs time and repetition to form. Content thrives on speed and replacement. When beauty is designed to be endlessly adjustable, it loses the ability to anchor itself in the viewer's mind. You admire it, but you don't remember it. Old Hollywood understood that beauty needed edges to last. Sharpness creates recognition. Contrast creates imprint. A face with definition can withstand repetition without becoming boring, because its power comes from clarity, not novelty. You don't need to reinvent it. You need to reinforce it. And that is why these images still hold us. They weren't trying to be timeless. They were simply designed with permanence in mind. They assumed the image would be seen again and again. Modern beauty assumes the opposite. The image will be scrolled past in seconds, replaced tomorrow, forgotten next week. And in designing for disappearance, it ensures exactly that. Beauty designed to last is not softer, it's stronger. And strength once captured refuses to fade. Chapter 4. When Mystery Died. Mystery is not accidental. It never has been. Mystery is something that must be actively protected, built through restraint, distance, and silence. Old Hollywood understood this instinctively. Mystery was treated as a resource, finite, fragile, and powerful. It was rationed carefully because everyone involved understood that once mystery was gone, it could never be fully recovered. Old Hollywood actresses were rarely seen outside controlled contexts. Their images appeared in films, studio portraits, and carefully approved magazine spreads. That was it. There were no casual glimpses, no behind-the-scenes access, no sense that the audience was entitled to know who these women were when the camera wasn't rolling. Their personal lives were either mythologized into elegant narratives or concealed entirely. Absence wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the engine of desire. The space between appearances allowed the image to grow larger than the person behind it. That distance created reverence. When an actress appeared on screen, it mattered. When a new photograph circulated, it carried weight. The audience didn't feel familiarity, they felt curiosity. They didn't feel ownership, they felt awe. Mystery invited projection. Viewers filled in the blanks themselves, imagining depth, complexity, and inner worlds they were never shown. Today, the entire dynamic has reversed. Modern actresses are expected to be accessible, relatable, constantly visible. The digital age runs on proximity, not distance. The algorithm rewards availability and punishes absence. Silence is interpreted as disengagement. Privacy is framed as elitism. Distance is treated as something to correct rather than protect. In this system, actresses are no longer just performers. They're constant streams. We see them everywhere. Talk shows, press junkets, Instagram stories, TikTok trends. Get ready with me videos filmed under bathroom lighting. We see them barefaced, tired, joking, vulnerable, and oversharing. Again, none of this is inherently bad, but it's cumulative. Each glimpse chips away at the singularity of the image. When we see everything, nothing lingers. An actress who is everywhere no longer has one defining image. Her identity fragments into content. Glamorous on the red carpet, casual on Instagram. Earnest in interviews, vulnerable everywhere. Each version feels authentic in isolation, but together they blur into noise. There is no fixed visual or emotional anchor, nothing sharp enough to crystallize into memory. Old Hollywood would have seen this as a fatal iconography. Icons are not built on intimacy. They are built on asymmetry, on the sense that the image exists slightly beyond reach. Mystery creates hierarchy, and hierarchy creates power. Modern celebrity culture, by contrast, flattens everything. The star is brought down to eye level, then invited to explain herself endlessly. An explanation is the enemy of myth. Iconography needs scarcity. It needs silence. It needs the discipline to say no to appearances, to access, to constant self-disclosure. Mystery thrives in what is not shown. It depends on absence as much as presence. Modern fame runs on saturation. Images are produced endlessly, circulated instantly, and replaced just as fast. The goal is not to linger in the imagination, but to remain visible at all costs. And saturation, no matter how glossy, kills myth. It erodes reverence, it turns symbol into personalities, and personalities into content. Old Hollywood built legends by showing less. Modern culture shows everything and wonders why nothing lasts. The depth of mystery isn't a failure of individual actresses. It's the result of a system that no longer allows mystery to survive. Algorithms don't reward restraint. Platforms don't reward silence. The modern star is never allowed to disappear long enough to become larger in absence. And without mystery, beauty becomes familiar. Without scarcity, images become disposable. Without distance, icons cannot exist. Mystery didn't fade away on its own. It was slowly crowded out by access, by visibility, by the endless demand to be seen. And once it was gone, so was the magic. Chapter 5: Icons versus It Girls. Old Hollywood built women meant to outlast their era. Their images were created with the assumption that time would test them, and that they needed to survive it. These actresses were not styled for a season, a headline, or a moment of virality. They were styled for endurance. Their faces, silhouettes, and personas were designed to deepen over time, to become more meaningful through repetition rather than novelty. Modern culture builds women meant to dominate a season. The It Girl's not designed to last. She's designed to peak. Her power lies in speed. She trends loudly, appears everywhere at once, and captures attention with intensity rather than stability. Her image is valuable not because it endures, but because it circulates. And once the circulation slows, relevance is assumed to have ended. Another face takes her place, wearing a slightly altered version of the same trends, repeating the same cycle. This isn't a failure of talent or taste. It's a structural reality. In the attention economy, reinvention isn't artistic, it's economic. A stable image doesn't generate clicks. Repetition doesn't spark discourse. Stillness doesn't feed algorithms. So the it girl must constantly become someone new. A new aesthetic, a new personal angle, a new vulnerability, a new provocation. Her image is refreshed endlessly, not preserved. She is encouraged to evolve even when evolution erodes coherence. Icons, by contrast, were allowed to repeat, to stay visually consistent, to deepen rather than diversify. Repetition wasn't seen as stagnation, it was reinforcement. Familiarity created recognition, recognition created attachment, and attachment over time created reverence. Each appearance didn't need to surprise the audience, it needed to remind them. Modern fame has inverted that logic. Consistency is framed as boring, stability is mistaken for complacency. The demand is constant novelty, even when novelty weakens identity. As a result, many modern stars feel intensely present in the moment and strangely absent in memory. You remember that they were everywhere, but not what they stood for. Permanence in the system is unprofitable. Icons take time to build. They require patience, restraint, and repetition, qualities that don't scale well in a market driven by speed and metrics. An icon resists replacement because she doesn't change easily, and anything that resists change resists monetization. The attention economy thrives on turnover. New faces keep the machine moving. Old images are quietly archived. This is why modern images move fast, burn bright, and disappear quietly. They are designed to perform, not to endure. They are optimized for visibility, not memory. And visibility without structure is fleeting. Old Hollywood creates icons because it believed images could go into myth. Modern culture creates it girls because it believes images are only valuable while they're moving. And in a world that never stops moving, nothing is given the chance to stay. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below. I mean, I do feel with celebrity culture nowadays, because of social media, everyone, like, there is no mystery behind them. Like back in the day, you would get like a tabloid shot in black and white in a magazine, or like see them at the Oscars or like red carpet, but everything is just always everywhere all the time. You can look at stars' Instagram stories and see what they're doing every day, and that mystery isn't there. I mean, obviously there are a few actors and people that are very talented that will always kind of remain that icon, but that's like through decades of building up a career and staying relevant. It's just different. Like these old Hollywood stars just have a different feeling to them, which is very iconic. And I just don't know in 50 years if we're gonna look back at stars from today and if they'll have that same presence. That's all. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think about all this? All right, thanks for watching.